Charleston's oldest families glittered beneath the chandeliers of the Belmont estate, their laughter floating above the orchestra like it belonged to another world entirely. And into that world stepped Aaliyah Monroe, 19, in a borrowed navy dress that betrayed every tremor in her chest. She had barely crossed the ballroom when Diane Hartwell turned, eyes cold enough to hush half the room. "She thinks she can sit with us?" Diane murmured, but loud enough for the guests to smirk. "That girl will never sit at our table." Aaliyah tried to swallow the sting. "I'm only here for the scholarship dinner," she said carefully, her voice steady though her hands shook. Diane's smile sharpened. "Sweetheart, people like you don't belong in rooms like this." Conversation around them thinned to a brittle silence. Then, from the far corner, an elderly man rose. His gaze locked on Diane with a recognition that twisted the air. "That's quite enough," he said. Diane's confidence cracked, her grandmother went pale, whispering, "No, it can't be him." And Aaliyah felt the ground shift beneath her, because whoever he was, the Hartwells looked terrified. For the full story, like this video and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales. The moment the old man stepped forward, the air inside the Belmont ballroom shifted. Not with curiosity, but with something colder, sharper, like the world itself paused to listen. Aaliyah didn't know his name, but the fear that washed across Diane's face said enough. This wasn't a stranger to her family. This was a reckoning walking toward them on polished marble floors. Glasses stilled. Laughter died. Even the orchestra hesitated, the final notes stretching awkwardly before fading into silence. Aaliyah tried to step aside, unsure if this confrontation had anything to do with her, but the old man gently raised a hand. "Stay where you are, young lady," he said, voice calm but carrying weight. "You've endured enough running tonight." Diane shot him a brittle smile, trying to recover her composure. "Sir, I'm not sure who you think you are, but this is a private event." "Security." "No," Lenora Hartwell cut in, her voice thin, trembling. "Do not go near him." For the first time all evening, Diane looked genuinely confused. "Grandmother, what's going on?" Lenora didn't answer. She stared at the old man as if staring into the past, one she'd buried deep, one she never expected to face again. The old man stopped less than a yard from Aaliyah, turning fully toward the Hartwells. "You've spent years pretending I no longer existed," he said quietly. "Tonight that ends." A ripple of shock moved through the room. Aaliyah swallowed hard. "Sir, why are you here? Why step in for me?" He looked at her then, not with pity, but with recognition that softened the lines along his face. "You'll understand soon," he said gently. "I promise you that." He reached into his coat and pulled out a worn photograph, holding it between two steady fingers. "Tell me, Lenora. Do you remember her?" Lenora's face paled further, but she didn't speak. Aaliyah leaned closer. Her breath caught. It was her mother, much younger, smiling, alive with the warmth Aaliyah still carried in memory. Why do you have that?" she whispered. The old man exhaled slowly, as though bracing himself against 30 years of grief. "Because she was my daughter." The ballroom erupted with whispers. Diane stepped back like the floor had tilted beneath her. Aaliyah stared at him, unable to blink, unable to breathe. "My mother, she never said." "She didn't know," he said. "She died believing a lie someone else crafted." His eyes lifted to Lenora. Something broke in Lenora's expression, something small and frightened. "Don't do this," she hissed under her breath. "Not here." "Oh, I will," the old man replied. "Because this young woman deserves to know who she is, and who tried to erase her." He opened the leather briefcase he'd carried, revealing stacks of documents, sealed envelopes, and notarized statements. Forensic reports, property deeds, bank transfers, proof. Diane's voice trembled for the first time. "Grandmother, what did you do?" Lenora's mask finally cracked. "I protected us," she snapped. "Everything I did was for this family." The old man shook his head. "Your family, or your legacy. You stole from my daughter, And when she walked away from wealth to build her own life, you let her suffer. Worse, you convinced her I wanted nothing to do with her. Aaliyah felt the room tilt, not from fear, but from the devastating truth settling over her. The pieces of her mother's pain suddenly made sense. The unanswered questions. The silence around her childhood. The moment she thought her mother hid tears because she was tired, when instead she had been grieving a father she believed had abandoned her. She never stopped loving you, Aaliyah whispered. She always said she wished she had more, wished she had family. The old man closed his eyes. I know. And that guilt is something Lenora will never carry, because she doesn't feel it. That sentence cut deeper than anything he'd said before. And it was true. Lenora's gaze held rage, not remorse. He lifted a second document, stamped with a golden seal. This estate, he announced, belongs legally to Aaliyah Monroe, my granddaughter, the rightful heir. Gasps erupted. Someone dropped a champagne flute. Diane shook her head, whispering no over and over as though denial could undo reality. This is absurd, Lenora barked. You have no standing. A group of attorneys stepped forward from the side entrance, their arrival silent but decisive. One spoke firmly. Mrs. Hartwell, your standing is precisely what is in question. The court has already approved emergency orders regarding the fraudulent transfers tied to your name. What transfers? Diane asked, turning desperately to her grandmother. When Lenora didn't answer, the realization hit her like a physical blow. You lied to me, she whispered. My whole life, you lied about everything. The old man nodded once. She inherited your cruelty, Lenora, but not your cunning. Tonight she learns the cost of both. The room's energy shifted again. Guests who once hovered around the Hartwells now stepped back, unwilling to be caught in the fallout. Aaliyah stood trembling, torn between shock and a rising strength she didn't recognize yet. She looked at the man who claimed her as family. Why did you wait until tonight? He met her gaze with painful honesty. I waited until the truth was airtight, so no one could ever take what's yours. So when I stood beside you, I stood without fear of losing you again. Those words cracked open something inside her, a grief she had buried under years of survival. Diane suddenly lunged forward, her voice desperate. You think she deserves this? She showed up in a borrowed dress. She's nobody. The old man didn't raise his voice. And yet she has more dignity in her smallest gesture than you've shown your entire life. The ballroom held its breath. Then security entered, this time not for Aaliyah. The lead guard approached Lenora. Ma'am, we were given documents. We're required to escort you and your granddaughter off the property. I built everything you see. Lenora shouted, her voice splintering. This city respects me. You think they'll let you replace me with her? Aaliyah stepped forward then, not timid, not shaking. Her voice rang clear. They will, she said, because they'll finally learn the truth you buried. And unlike you, I won't spend my life hurting people to keep what isn't mine. A murmur spread. Approval, quiet yet powerful. Diane broke completely. You can't do this, she screamed. You can't take everything from us. The old man's expression hardened. No, Diane. Your grandmother took everything from her. Tonight, the balance is simply restored. Security took Lenora by the arms as she hissed threats at anyone who dared watch. Diane's cries grew shrill as she followed, protesting, pleading, but the doors closed behind them with a final echoing thud. The ballroom exhaled. Silence settled, not empty but reverent. Aaliyah looked at the old man, tears streaking silently down her face. Everything I thought I knew about my life. It's different now. He placed a hand over his heart. And it will keep changing. But you won't face it alone. Her future stretched out before her. Not polished marble and chandeliers, but something rooted in truth, in justice, in reclaiming what was stolen. And yet the night wasn't over. Not even close. Because the consequences for the Hartwells were only just beginning. When the ballroom finally emptied, Aaliyah stepped onto the terrace where the night air was quieter than the storm she had just lived through. Charleston's skyline shimmered beyond the gardens, and for the first time, she stood there not as a guest, but as someone who finally understood her own story. The weight of the evening still clung to her, yet something inside her had shifted. Steady, grounded, no longer shaped by shame or doubt. She thought of her mother, of the nights they counted loose change for bus fare, of the gentle strength that carried them through years no one else ever saw. That strength felt alive in her now, as if the truth had handed it back to her piece by piece. Thaddeus joined her at the railing, offering no speeches, just presence. "You did more than endure tonight," he said quietly. "You reclaimed what was yours." Aaliyah nodded, not in triumph, but in clarity. What mattered wasn't the estate or the documents spread across polished tables. It was knowing that lies had finally met their end, and that she was free to build something honest from the ruins they left behind. In the reflection of the glass doors, she caught a glimpse of herself. No longer the girl who tried to disappear in the back row, but a young woman standing tall beneath chandelier light and open sky. And that was the image she chose to carry forward. If this story moved you, help it reach someone who needs it. Like, share, and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales so we can keep bringing these journeys to life.